All right, so today I want to talk about the expectations and the overall narrative that will be following Lamar Jackson throughout his career. And it's up to him to respond to this and show us what he's made of. Let's start with the expectations. So, we already know that Lamar Jackson is most likely going to end up winning this year's MVP. I'm pretty sure that's a foregone conclusion. Russell Wilson did have a great regular season as well, but it's just going to go to Lamar Jackson. The guy led the league in touchdown passes, had over 1,200 yards rushing, and 7 touchdown runs as well. He was the most entertaining and the best player in the league this season and shined the brightest on primetime when he went 3-0 and had 13 total touchdowns and no turnovers. He was perfect on primetime. Now, sadly, as Ravens fans, this did not show up in the postseason, and we ended up getting upset by the Titans, but we got to look forward. It is what it is. It was a bad game. Prepare for next season. But for Lamar Jackson himself, he's going to end up winning the MVP, and it's going to be a great reward. But with that award comes expectations. Now Lamar has separated himself from his draft class. Sam Darnold, Josh Allen, Josh Rosen, if somebody ever gives this guy a chance, and Baker Mayfield. If none of these quarterbacks make the playoffs next year, they will not really be held accountable. There will be questions about whether they're the guy for their team, but they will not be held accountable. Like, you can use Baker, for example, because a lot of people, Baker out of the other 4, they like looking at Baker the most. If Baker does not take Cleveland to the playoffs next year, it's not going to be held against him. Because they're going to look at it, they're going to look at the situation and say, well, Baker's with the Browns and this organization's terrible. They don't know what they're doing. They're not surrounding him with what he needs to. He doesn't have the right coaching. There'll be all sorts of things that they'll use, and they won't put the blame on him. Which, again, some of it's fair, some of it's not. Now, if he takes them to the playoffs, it'll be a nice surprise. They're like, wow, Cleveland actually made the playoffs. Baker had a great season and took his team to the playoffs. I hope he can continue this so that we can stop looking at him like he's some sort of bad quarterback. Like the way people have looked at him this season, even though that's unfair. But yeah, if he takes him to the playoffs, it'll be a nice surprise. And people will look at it like, wow, Baker had a good year. The same could be said for these other quarterbacks, except maybe Allen, because he actually took his team to the playoffs. So maybe he's got a little bit more expectations on him now. Not especially with the situation in New England. We don't know what's going to happen with that. If Tom Brady does not come back next year, people are going to look at the Bills like, it's your division to take now. So we'll see how that goes. But at least mostly for these other quarterbacks in this class, they're not really looked at badly if they don't make the playoffs. With Lamar, it's an entirely different case. If they miss the playoffs, no matter what, all the blame will be put on Lamar Jackson, even if it's not his fault. Now, I mean, unless he's not healthy. If he's not healthy, that's a different situation. But if Lamar was healthy throughout the entire season and the team just didn't get it done, they're not going to look at the coaching. They're not going to look at the talent. They're going to look at Lamar Jackson, and all the blame will be on him. If they make the playoffs next year, nobody's going to care. People are going to say, what, you want a cookie for making the playoffs? Congratulations. It don't mean nothing. And the reason for this is he's now an MVP. And when you are an MVP, you have expectations put on you. You are expected to win at least 12 games. You are expected to make the playoffs. You are expected to win your division. You are expected to be competing for a championship every single season. So, Lamar needs to win his division every single season. That's the expectation. It doesn't mean he has to, but that's the expectations put on you because you are now an MVP, a caliber quarterback. So, you are expected to win your division. You are expected to be in the postseason, and you are expected to be competing for a championship. And at some point, you've got to get to a Super Bowl. All these expectations will now be put on Lamar for the rest of his career. Because that is what an MVP is supposed to do. An MVP is supposed to carry his team to the playoffs. An MVP is supposed to get it done in the postseason. And an MVP is supposed to find a way to win a Super Bowl. That's what it means. When you get put in that category, that's what it means. And that's the category Lamar will be put in once he wins his MVP. So there won't be any more excuses for Lamar next season. If he does not have a great season, it's all on him. If the team does not make the playoffs, it's all on him. If the team makes the playoffs, he's expected to take them to the Super Bowl. That's what happens when you become an MVP. And I hope Lamar understands that because if you think the critics are wilding right now after this bad playoff loss, just wait for what they would say if you end up having a bad season next year and you don't even take this team to the postseason. After you just became an MVP caliber quarterback, no. They will not let that slide. Now, as for the narrative after this postseason loss, it's really just gonna be that you're a choker. Now, of course, the classic Lamar can't throw, Lamar's a running back narrative is always going to be there. That's just how it is in the league, and that's just how fans do it. When you come into this league as a quarterback, there's always some narrative that follows you throughout your career. And no matter what you do or what you accomplish, that narrative will always follow you. No matter what Baker does, he's always going to be seen as arrogant. He's always going to be seen as childish. They know he has talent, but he's always going to be seen as this arrogant, childish guy who doesn't really care. That's just the narrative that's going to follow him. He can end up winning a Super Bowl and show how much of a great team player he is, and how much of a great leader he is for the Browns. But if one thing happens, or one sort of incident happens that involves him, oh, it's Baker Mayfield doing the same thing again. It's the same old Baker Mayfield. What else is new with this guy? That's just what happens. Once you get a narrative on you, it follows you throughout your career. So no matter what Lamar does, no matter if he sets any passing records or whatever he does, or maybe he comes back next year, puts up even more touchdown passes, less interceptions, more rushing yards, and more rushing touchdowns. Let's say he ends up with a total of 55 touchdowns. It's not going to matter. This narrative of him not being able to throw the football will always be there. And it's just something you got to deal with. But this new narrative that comes up of you being a choker in the playoffs, that is something that's going to follow you throughout this offseason and into next season. Meaning, next year, you are already expected to be in the playoffs, and once you get to the playoffs, you got to prove to everybody that you don't choke at the biggest moment. You can win a playoff game, and you can lead this team to the Super Bowl. Until you can do that, you'll be known as a choker. Peyton Manning went through this exact same thing, and it was something that followed him throughout his career. Even when he won a Super Bowl, he still had a lot of choky performances throughout his career. And even though he finishes one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play this game, people still have that tag of him being a choker. And honestly, that may end up following Lamar until he at least wins a Super Bowl. And if he continues to win playoff games, that narrative can be taken away. But right now, he's 0-2 in the postseason and put up two of his worst performances of his career. So yes, the narrative moving forward for him is going to be that he's a choker in the playoffs. He's a great regular season quarterback. Oh, he's going to put all-time great numbers up in the regular season. But when it matters most, when it comes to winning a championship, Lamar will be seen as a choker. He always chokes in the biggest moments. That's the narrative. That's going to be the narrative for him moving forward until he proves them wrong. So as the ball's in your court, Lamar, it's up to you. Show us what you're made of. Right now, you're at the very bottom. You were at the bottom last year, and you grinded and you grinded and you grinded and made it all the way to the top just to fall right back at the bottom because of one loss in the postseason. That's just how it goes in sports. It's the same thing, man. It's just how it goes in sports. One day you're looked at the best. You're looked at like you're the best in the league, and the next thing you know, you have one bad performance. And people put these narratives around you, and it's just how it goes. So it's up to you to prove these guys wrong. Put in more work in the offseason, come back as an even more improved passer, and show these guys that you can take this team to the Super Bowl. Next year, it's not about, at least we can make the playoffs. Let's make the playoffs. Nope, those are gone. That's gone. It's Super Bowl or bust. When you become an MVP, it's Super Bowl or bust. If this team is not competing for a championship next year, you will be held responsible. No excuses there. None. So, ball's in your court, Lamar. These are the expectations put on you, and this is the narrative that will follow you until you prove them wrong. Go do your thing, man. That being said, that's all I got. Thanks for watching, and I'm out of here. Peace.